All right, good morning. There it shows up, and that's not the screen I want to get at. This feels so weird being back at Studio A. I just feel like I've forgotten how to run a live stream from here. There, I've got a confirmation of audio. I did a little extra step in making sure this thing was working right, not muted. Should be working right. Give me a number 3 in chat if audio video is good. It is August 18th on a Thursday, 9:01 a.m. On the Pacific side of the country. I'm back in Fresno, California. Again, not a virtual background. There's a 3 from Tony Wallow. Thank you so much. Speaking of Tony Wallow, I have an alarm to talk about, to remind me to talk about Tony Wallow this morning, because he has been so regular and consistent with doing these 99-cent, $1.99 super chats and super thanks. And occasionally I miss thanking you for it. Tony, I want to let you know those are really special. I know it's not a high dollar amount. That doesn't, it's really special. It's heartwarming every time I see that come from you. And then there was one time, Tony, when Tony was away, he did a super thanks. Super thanks is in the comments under a video. You can do a super thanks there. It's very similar to a super chat. And I know that I forgot to thank him for that afterwards or on the next opportunity I had. And sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, Tony, but it's just so special what you do. And you do it for a lot of content creators, and I know that. What was I going to? Oh, yeah, he said that he was out doing errands. So he let me know the reason why he missed that day is because he's out doing errands. I don't expect you to always do that, Tony, but it is really special and heartwarming that you do. So anyway, Zavi Menor says Studio A-3. Jeff had, yes, Jeff also. You did a PayPal. I believe it was a $10 PayPal, and I forgot to thank you for that one too. And yes, I did see that. And it actually sends me an email when that happens. So I think if I just go right back here and let's see, does it show up as, can I search it this way? Yeah, that didn't. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Service at PayPal, August 13th. Jeff Ryman sent you $10. Yes, I got that. Thank you. Every one of those is special and heartwarming and encouraging. So I thank you for those and everyone else who has done those kinds of contributions. So let's get going with today's content. Which button? I think this one. Try that. Today's title, Windows Daily 35. No, that's not today. Here, Windows Daily 36, Troubleshooting a Broken, Complicated Home Office Network. So I've got some objects here on my desk to demonstrate that. But first we got to go catch up with yesterday's live stream. I've got one highlighted here. I reviewed the chats from yesterday's live stream, and I think there's just 2 that I want to specifically respond to. This one where Lawn Dog saying, I'm assuming that other files that were created after those backups don't exist anymore. Boy, this can be a little hard on the mind when you think about it. So I acknowledge the part about hard on the mind, but I also want to point out that until you actually do that and experience that, meaning doing backups and incremental and differential and full backups and restoring them and doing them repeatedly so that you know the process inside and out and gain some confidence in it. Here's the question. Lawn Dog says, okay, so when I've got a backup of whatever that all-in-one was at the moment, and then I restore a backup from a few days prior, do I lose the newer data that was in the current computer state? Well, yes and no. It depends. And because I use OneDrive, the answer is no. Because in the current state of the computer, any data that I created or any documents that I edited are stored to OneDrive. So when I restore a backup from a few days ago, it restores the backup and then it synchronizes with OneDrive. So anything new that's up in the cloud for OneDrive gets pulled down to that instance of the computer's state of operations. So all these different features that could get confusing and complicated if you know what you're doing, and know what you're doing by doing it over and over and over, and practicing and trying little tweaks and changes. So I know that process really well of being able to restore from a prior state and what data might I lose. Now, there are some locations on a C drive that are not part of OneDrive. Like you've seen me use that C:\SW setup folder a lot. That's not backed up to the cloud, but that's easy for me to grab from somewhere else. And I can mount a backup image. So after restoring a backup from a few days ago, I can then mount the image that I backed up just before this restore operation and grab individual files from that mounted backup. Now, mounted backup just means it shows up as the D drive or G drive or whatever letter you want to assign to it. You can browse through the directory structure and just copy and paste to where you want it to be. So there's a lot of really useful things that can be done with that for a Doug. It's not useful to everybody. You got to be, I guess, certain style of working that's going to be useful to you. And then there was another one in here that was a few lines lower that I wanted to reply to. That's what I expect during this operation. It might be hard to differentiate. Is it really the internet, or is it the computer off doing things and swapping files around, causing momentary data interruption? So what that was referring to is when I was doing that backup and restore yesterday, there were times, apparently, I haven't gone back and watched it yet. Turned out to be a busy day yesterday. You'll find out why in a little bit. Apparently there were some glitches in the live stream, but I wanted to point out that, as I understand it, I didn't look this up recently. If somebody else in chat knows this, you can chime in chat. But I believe that, Mac Reflect uses VSS, Volume Shadow Services, I think is what that acronym stands for. And it's a capability that's built into Microsoft Windows operating systems. It hasn't always been in all of the end user systems, but it is available with, I think, Windows 10 Home and Pro. Volume Shadow Services is basically a capability that Windows has of taking a snapshot of the files, even the files that are in use at the time, taking a snapshot of them and storing that to the backup. One of the backups that I restored, it restored to the state of an open document that had not been saved yet. So when I went to close that document, it asked if I wanted to save the changes. So it was actually saving not just the files that are stored on the drive, but the current operating state of the computer, because it's an image backup. So if you have programs open, browsers open, those restore to that open state. All right, now that's all I wanted to catch up on yesterday. There was no comments on that video. I don't believe I had any emails to respond to. So let's get on with today's topic. I'll pop out chat just to make sure you're not telling me of a problem or you can't hear me or whatever. Yeah, so then here's some comments, and also Lundog, thank you for the compliment yesterday, or the thank you yesterday about demonstrating that backup and restore during a live video. So, the complicated troubleshooting a broken, complicated home office network. Oh, by the way, before we start here, fair warning, I see that Ken Stout Live is in the audience. Yeah, so I need to set this up before I start describing because it's only fair. Ken Stout, there's going to be a quiz at the end of today's session. I am requiring that you answer every question correctly. And that's going to happen during live chat. I'll ask you the question. I'm requiring that you answer every question correctly. So pay attention. Ken Stout. Now, for those of you who are in the chat, if you would like to propose questions for the quiz, here's how you do it. In the chat room, let's see, quiz for Ken. So QFK in the chat equals. And then type what you want me to ask as a quiz question to Ken. So I guess I should say, let's see, I'll put it with brackets. Propose your quiz question for Ken. Now, I'm not promising that I'm going to use your quiz question. I may use the question that I have preconceived. But yeah, oh great, he says. Okay, so challenge is on. He has taken the challenge. Does that mean it's starting now because I missed the first cut? No, it's not. It is about to start. Okay, the session is about to start. So as we're going through this, if I say something or bring up a point that you think that would make a good quiz question, just go ahead and do that in chat. Type the QFK quiz for Ken. I don't know why I keep doing a T equal sign, and then type your proposed question. All right, so now we have the ground rules laid out. Let me show you. Now, this is a real live troubleshooting problem, a broken, complicated home network that's not fixed yet. Yesterday, I started working on it from the cabin. Spent a significant amount of time with my client on the phone. After today's live stream, after this live stream, I have an appointment with that client, 9:30. 16 minutes from now. It's going to be a little bit late to take the next step in trying to solve this problem. So here I'm going to show you. I'm going to switch to what I call a keyboard camera, as is pointed to the desk. I have these pieces of equipment here. Now, these are not the equipment that we're dealing with at his home network, but I'm using these to demonstrate what's going on. So this one, we're going to say, is his ISP's router. His internet service provider router. Could be Comcast, could be AT&T. In his case, it is different. So this is the ISP router. Then this is a virtual private network router. So it's another router. There's one cable, one Ethernet cable going to the VPN router. And then there's one Ethernet cable going from here to a network switch. From this network switch on the ground floor of his California coastal townhouse style condominium house, there's Ethernet cables going out to equipment that's on that floor. And then there's one of these Ethernet cables that goes up through the house to the second floor to another network switch. And then this network switch has Ethernet cables coming out of it to different equipment. And one of these Ethernet cables comes out to a Ubiquiti Unify access point for Wi-Fi. This provides Wi-Fi service to that floor. Now, the VPN router is to give him a persistent connection to his office network. Now, some of you have heard the term VPN, where you would connect to a VPN service, and then from there you could go out to Netflix or whatever, and it looks like you're coming from a different country. This is a different use of the acronym VPN. It's virtual private network is what it means in each case. But in this case, this provides a persistent, continual, private connection to his office from his weekend home that's 200 miles away. Now think about that. So from his home office computer, he can pull up File Explorer and browse through the drive letters of the server that's located here in Fresno. So it provides a persistent communication. Now, the way that we've configured this is so that anytime he tries to access something that's in the office network, that internet traffic will be directed to his office. But anytime the computers in his weekend home are trying to just go out to the internet, they don't get routed through the office and then out to the internet. They just go straight out to the internet. Okay? So this is a programmable router. Now, the situation is when he called me, says nobody in the weekend house can get internet connection. They can't browse the internet. What's going on? So we started making connections in different places, trying to narrow down where the problem is. And at one point, we thought the problem was between the wires that were going from this switch up to the top floor and to this switch, because when we disconnected and reconnected, it seemed to come back on. Now I'm thinking that, yes, that was one of the problems, but I think there were a couple other problems. The Wi-Fi device, they were able to connect to the Wi-Fi SSID, but they could not get access to the internet. So they could connect to this, and their signals would actually communicate through these boxes to get to this point, but they couldn't get out to the internet, right? Now, when we took, I had him some time ago get a 50-foot Ethernet cable so that he could run a connection from the downstairs tub, is what he calls it, where all the equipment is. So I think of a metal electrical panel or plastic panel inside a wall with a door that opens. So he could connect an Ethernet cable to a port there and run it all the way up to his laptop, which is on the second floor, for troubleshooting purposes. So what happened is he could connect this Ethernet cable from the LAN port of the internet service provider's router, run it all the way up to the second floor and connect it to his laptop, and he was able to browse the internet with that. So that makes us think the ISP's router is okay. However, when I used ipconfig to see what IP address was assigned to his computer, it was something to the effect of 66.207. something. It's only the first two octets. Even the first octet was enough to tell me this is not right, because an internal network IP address is from a service provider typically starts with 192.168.something or 10.1.something. And in my records, it actually showed that that should be the case on that network. It was expected to be from the internet service provider 192.something. Now, the way we're configured is the VPN router is expecting to see that standard type of IP address. And then this router would send out the internal IP addresses that we want to use for all the equipment inside the house, which in this case turned out to be, we have it set up for 10.3.51.something. It was a mistake to move my hand there. That's all the IP addresses coming from here. 10.3.51. And that addressing scheme correlates to the internal addressing scheme we use in the office, and we can use at other remote connections if we need to have such remote connections. When I saw that his laptop connected directly to the ISP router got an IP address that looks like a public IP address, that tells me either there's something wrong with this router that it's operating basically in bridge mode. It seems to be operating in bridge mode because it's passing the public IP address for this router, passing it through the local network connection to the laptop. It shouldn't ought to do that, except for the possibility that if we had chose to, we could have configured this VPN router to pick up a static IP address that is bridged through this router, and so that this device is actually has public IP exposure. That could be that there is a scenario where we would want to do that, but my recollection is that we intended this as its original design as a travel router, meaning it could be taken to any other location and it could be connected to a network port of any router and be able to give a persistent connection to the office. How are you doing, Ken? Are you keeping up? Let's go take a look and see what's going on in chat. Let's see. QFK proposed to you a quiz question. Yeah, this quiz kind of interesting by my case. I'm reinstalling stuff, Windows 7 machine, problem with this video. Okay, QFK, how much data was moved? Let's see, we're wondering if there is a way to reset all the settings back to default for shared files, home network, assume. Okay, function, and start over probably command line function. Zavid, the VPN unit have a DHCP server? Yes, yes. Thank you for asking that, Zavid. This device has DHCP service, so it hands out local area network addresses to all the other devices that are connected to these switches, including the unified Wi-Fi access point. The DHCP for this device we would have turned that off when we did the configuration. Okay, and Ken says he's keeping up as best he can. Iran, Israel, sounds like the ISP device acting like a modem, not a router. Yes, it does act. Does appear to be acting like a modem. Another term for that is a pass-through router or a router operating in bridge mode. All of that functions basically the same, where the IP signal coming out from the LAN port of the router is actually the public IP address. Now, my client called the ISP service asking for their assistance, actually before he called me. After I worked with them for a while, he called them again with another specific question. The ISP service wanted to send a technician out, and I asked my client, postpone that or cancel it. I don't want them out here yet, because their technician's probably not going to understand VPN network configurations. And at that point in time, I was thinking that we had configured this as bridge mode. But since then, I've realized I don't think we would have wanted to do that, because we would want for him to be able to bypass this device if something goes wrong with it, or to take it to another location. In that case, we want this to instantly recover and operate on its own, which actually would mean we'd want to leave DHCP turned on. Yeah, not really sure which we did there. And the ISP router also had Wi-Fi capability, and I'm certain we turned that off. Okay? So what I'm thinking at this point that the trouble is, I didn't finish the comment. When my client called back to the internet service provider and then called me afterwards, he said, "Oh, Doug, I found out that I have residential service. I thought I had business class service." That made me think that we were of the understanding, if he had told us previously it was business class service, it would have been in response to our question, do you have a static IP address at your home? So that static IP address is never going to change. In that case, bridge mode would be okay here. We would accept that. We'd accept bridge mode here. We would use a static public IP address from here so that we have a persistent connection. But my client yesterday says, oops, I found out it's a residential service, which means the IP address, the public IP address, might change, will change periodically. It might be months before it changes. So we may have configured this device to use the public IP address that was being used back then when we configured it 8 months ago, something like that. And now they have changed the address. By the way, the system was working perfectly the night before. He called me yesterday morning after Windows Daily and with letting me know of the problem. So what I'm thinking may have happened is we might have had this configured for that static, what we thought was a static public IP address. Now, if that's the case, what I can do is I need to connect to this device in order to reconfigure it. How are you going to do that, Doug? Well, here's what we're going to try to do in a few minutes after Windows Daily is over today. We'll run that 50-foot Ethernet cable from the Internet Service Provider's router through a LAN port, the port that normally goes to a computer, up to the second floor to the Ethernet port of his laptop computer. That'll let me connect remotely to his laptop computer. And then through the Wi-Fi port of his laptop computer, I'll connect to the Wi-Fi SSID. That signal going into here will go into the switch that's upstairs, that's still connected by Ethernet, to the switch downstairs, which is connected by Ethernet cable to the LAN port of the VPN router. At this time, this router will no longer be connected to the ISP router because the ISP router only has one LAN port. So that's connected to the laptop. Through the laptop's Wi-Fi adapter, I'll connect to here. Signal goes through this switch, and gets me to the VPN router. I can access the programming interface for it and change the IP address to the IP address that currently is held by his laptop, because his laptop is picking up what appears to be the public IP address for the router. So that's what I'm calling a broken, complicated home office network. Now, what my client does with this VPN connection to his office is from his computer at the weekend home, he can browse through the network drive letters. Yes, theoretically, he could open, for instance, Microsoft Word and open a document, or open his vertical market programs to use them, but they don't perform very well that way. So what we actually have him doing is he will use remote desktop to connect to his office computer because it's fully set up for how he wants to operate at his desk in the office. His remote laptop is not set up with all of that software. So he connects remotely using remote desktop. The command on the run line you would use for that is MSTSC. It's often referred to as remote desktop, and you may come across advice through the tech press that says, oh, that's dangerous, don't use remote desktop. Well, what they're talking about is over the public internet. We're using a virtual private network, so it's all in the family, safe and secure. So that's what he normally does with it. Now, I think I've covered the subject area, and we're ready for a quiz for Ken. Let's see what quiz questions you've come up with, if any. Let's see, I said QFK. There's a QFK. How much data was moved? And is there any other QFK? The VPN unit have a oh yeah, I answered that one. I am lost during this and other episodes of this series, and I used to be a radar technician in the U.S. Air Force. And then no QFKs. Maybe the ISP router was reset, and the ISP router enabled a DHCP server also. Not possible. I'm wondering. Now my client called the Internet Service Provider and asked for them to work on the problem. And my client told me they said it looks good, looks like it's functioning, and we can connect to it. But then they scheduled a technician to come out. So I'm wondering if they actually realized there's something wrong with the router. Now, if we had reconfigured it intentionally to be bridge mode, which I'm not sure at the moment, then it would not look right to the ISP. But I don't think we did that. So the ISP service call, the helpline, might be correct in sending a technician out. Don't know that yet. Now, even if that is the case, I should be able to temporarily reconfigure the VPN router with that public IP address and get them all up and functioning. Now, coming back here. Rand Israel, does the VPN router serve all the computers at that location or only those that should be able to connect to the remote office? And the answer to that is the VPN router comes off of the ISP router and then from here to the network switches. So all the computers go through the VPN router. However, the only communications that are sent through to the Fresno office are the communications that are actually trying to access the server or the files that are in the office of the server. Any computers out here that are trying to access the internet directly, this router will route that traffic through the internet and not through the office. All right. How many switches? There are 2 switches. Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry. That was QFK. That was your quiz for Clan, and I just blew it. I thought that was a question for me. That was a question for Ken. Sorry, Jeff. Do you have another one? I know, but it's just funky to use. Oh, let's see. I'm just doing the QFKs and question marks in orange. Zvi. I had almost the same problem with a router that I configured as access point that was suddenly reset. The DHCP was enabled, and this made a problem to all computers, no internet. Yeah, certainly that is a very reasonable suspicion. I don't think it's what's going on here, but I will be looking for that possibility. Technically 3. Oh, he says Ken gave an answer to that. How many switches was 3? No, there were 2 switches because the VPN router is not referred to as a switch. Now, when you say technically, Ken, maybe you're interpreting one of these others as a switch. I guess you could. Can you call the Wi-Fi access point a switch? Well, multiple computers can be connected through it. I guess that could be argued. And here Ken says 2. And Jeff says no. Ken already answered incorrectly twice. What was the very first one? Now I'm destined for the waiting room in Ken's stream. The very first one, I think you're referring to, this was the ISP's router. It is not a switch because it only has 1 network port coming out of it. It goes to the VPN router. The VPN router only has 1 LAN port coming out of it, so not a switch. This is a switch. It's an Ethernet switch, so you can have multiple Ethernet cables coming out of it. One of these cables goes to this switch, which is upstairs, and it has multiple Ethernet cables coming out of it. So these 2 is what I think of as a switch. This is an access point for Wi-Fi. Multiple computers can connect to it, but you don't have multiple Ethernet ports. Did you call that a switch? Yeah, I don't know. All right, time for me to get on to my quiz question for Ken. And remember, I require that you answer this correctly. Let's see. No, you can't do, and don't mess that up, the terminology, because you're going to create things that are fuzzy. Calling modems a switch and other devices a switch. And I agree. I like that. I like your argument there, Lon Dog. Let's not call those switches. So here's my quiz question for Ken, and you must get this right. Here it is. Did I describe this as a complicated network or a simple network? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Come on, Ken. Give me an answer. Come on, Ken. Did I describe this as a complicated network or a simple network? And Lawn Dog blows it. He gives it away to Ken. Ken Stout says complicated. Oh well, I'm a dud. What can you expect? I hope that was useful. Maybe moderately entertaining. Maybe not. Have a great day, everybody. Catch you later. Goodbye.